Welcome to Conversations on the Couch. I'm your host, Dr. Danielle. Today I am joined by Valerie Kirby. Valerie, why don't you let the people know who you are and what you're up to?
Sure. Hi, Dr. Danielle. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Just a little bit about me. I'm Valerie, as Danielle said. Born and raised in Houston, Texas, originally. A little bit about just my professional life. I've always had a knack for helping other people, being compassionate, being kind, of course, being super funny. And see,
I'm not the most
I said I was
laughing. Yes, I'm sorry. Please continue.
funny. Anyway, but because of my empathetic approaches and just a little bit of admiration for the women in my family, I used to be a teacher. Um, I had a career in education. I have a master's degree in education, and just after teaching ESL for several years, I found it to be quite challenging, especially in Houston and the population that I was dealing with. And a former colleague of mine suggested that I teach abroad, so I ended up teaching abroad for several years in Abu Dhabi, UAE, the United Arab Emirates, for about 3 years. And in those years, I just really got the chance to spread my wings and kind of widen my outlook on life. I decided to change careers, and then I pivoted, and now I teach. Oh, sorry, now I teach. Sorry, now I work in tech.
I don't know.
A
Maybe there's more teaching
little
in your.
nervous. Got a little nervous there. But yeah, so I moved to New York a few years ago and went to like a coding boot camp or like a web development course, graduated from that, and then pivoted into the tech industry to where now I work for telecommunications company, and I also have my own email marketing company that I founded, Valerie K Email Marketing Services. Look me up, look me up. Um, but yeah, so I work fully remotely now, and I do a lot of email marketing. So you guys might see my emails in your inbox some of these days. That's a little bit about me.
I love that. Very diverse, right? Like just maybe you're more of a risk taker than I am. I think it takes a lot of bravery to move and to teach and do work in a totally different country, far away from home, as you said. So kudos to you and thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
So I was so excited to introduce you all to Valerie that I didn't even talk about what we were going to talk about today. So let me clue you in. We'll be talking about Black women and Black women's experience in therapy. What are the things that kind of bring us to therapy? What our experience has been? Any tips and tricks about destigmatizing therapy and just like mental health in the Black community, especially amongst Black women. So that is our topic today. And I just want to say thank you so much to you, Valerie, for coming on and being open and willing to talk about it. I know that it can sometimes be a little bit of a tricky topic, particularly because not everyone is ready to share that they are in therapy or talk about the things that might be coming up for them, right? There's still a lot of stigma around going to therapy and seeking those services. So I'm wondering, let's start off maybe with a lighter one of what prompted you to start therapy and what has your journey been like so far?
Yeah. So I think I did. I used to be one of those people who was like, ooh, therapy. Wow. Yikes. You know what I mean? But while I was overseas, I had a lot of close friends. Like we were all teacher friends, but we were all very close because all of us were coming from different parts of the world. And we're coming to this foreign country. We're teaching at the same school. And we also like to travel. So we travel together. So one of my good friends actually passed away very suddenly while I was there. And she was in her 30s. And I mean, I still remember like our last conversation. And yeah, I mean, she just kind of just died at school one day
Oh.
of like a heart attack or some type of like heart complications. And because I was one of her closer friends, I had to help put her funeral arrangements together and like, see about packing up her apartment, and because the school didn't really know how to handle it either, because they had never had something like that happen. So it was a lot on me. And then also it just helped me to realize that, hey, I'm really far from home. If something were to happen to me out here, like my family probably wouldn't want to fly, 18 hours across the world to, pay their respects to me. It was just a lot. So at that point, I decided to get into therapy. And I wanted an American therapist too. I think on a lot of podcasts, because I'm thinking this was like 2017. Yeah, like early 2017. And I had already decided, like, okay, this will be my last year out here. And then once my friend passed away, I was like, yeah, even more so, this is going to be my last year out here. And then I was like, I don't want to go back to the States and teach anymore. I want to try something completely different that no one's ever done in my family. And that's kind of crazy, but it was something that I really wanted to do. And I think I was also like dating someone at that time, and that was kind of like blowing up in my face too. So I found a therapist, and it was a lady out in California, and we talked for a few weeks, and I got to like cry and just release a lot of my worries and stresses and all that. And I found her incredibly helpful. So that's where I first started my therapy journey.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate your honesty around your thoughts about therapy before. A lot of people share those thoughts, that you aren't strong, or that it's like a weakness, that you can't handle your problems on your own. And, sometimes the reality is that we do need support, right? And I don't think, and of course I'm biased, right, as a psychologist, but what is the problem with wanting some additional support, right? What is the problem with, you could go through these things on your own, but if there are people there that are trained to help you and to support you through it, why not access that, right? And I think that's one of my biggest beefs with like these conversations about, oh, so people just pay to talk to you. I mean, yes, essentially, but it's quite more common. It's not like a hotline that you're just calling,
Right.
on my day, so there's a lot of like negative energy around therapy and its utility. So I'm really glad that you were able to access it, at that time.
Yeah. And I think it's good to talk to like a professional, someone who's had hours and hours of training, they're licensed or they're certified, your homegirl, your mom, like they don't always know everything, and you might not be comfortable sharing certain details with them that you might feel more comfortable sharing with the stranger. So that's something that I've always like appreciated about therapists. And then you have people who are, a lot more religious, who might say, take it to the Lord, you know what I mean? And just give it to God, which, okay, yes, of course, that's great. But then, having someone that you can actually, talk to and relate to and build this relationship, and someone who's going to hold you accountable and say, oh, well, last month you said XYZ. What happened to, you know what I mean? Right. Someone's going to call you out. I think you do need that, right? And you just kind of build that safe space, and your therapist can't like dangle it over your head and say, oh, well, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think therapy for all. If you need it, get it.
Yeah. And that last part, that you said, in terms of like dangling it in your face, right? It speaks to therapy being a space where you can be vulnerable. And hopefully, if your therapist is a good therapist and not out here doing wild things, right? They're not going to weaponize the things that you've said, right? And to honor and acknowledge that vulnerability, not only in the space with them, but to teach you and embolden you to honor your vulnerabilities in other spaces too. I think that is fundamentally how I try to approach therapy as well.
Yeah. Because my family, we're big jokes. Even my friends, we joke around a lot of times, and somebody might hit that one little nerve. And you're like, oh, I told you that in confidence. You know what I mean? And now they're like casually joking about it. Not to say that I have great family and friends, just saying that. We put that in the mic. Everyone's
Disclaimer.
great. But yeah, everyone's great. But I just know sometimes, you know, a therapist, I haven't had that experience where a therapist has kind of like joked about a sensitive matter. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm team therapy all the way, Danielle. Hats off. Doing the work. Doing the work.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been in therapy 3 times at 3 different stages in my life. And one of the things that I say that I absolutely hate about therapy is that once I know, right? The therapist hating therapy.
What?
Yeah, no,
No.
we too are people. We hate it too. Is that once I am made aware of something, it is very hard for me to go back to the ignorance is bliss type of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these therapists loved to just say, yeah, it seems like you're doing this thing when this thing happened. And, you know, that's a part of their job. And now I'm just like, every time, oh, are you really going to do that? You know why you're doing that. You know why this is happening. And I'm just like, well, this is no longer fun. And now I'm thinking about it. And now I have to make the conscious decision to engage in this thing, knowing the negative outcome. So I didn't really like that part of my treatment experience. Totally necessary. But that definitely changed the way that I saw the world and how I showed up in the world. And I'm wondering for you, how has therapy changed your self-perception of things, especially as you navigate the world as a Black woman?
It's definitely just opened my outlook, or I should say widen my outlook on what's possible for me as Valerie, as a Black woman, you know, as a person. Yeah, I think I used to have so many ideas around like what I had to do, who I had to be, you know, even what I had to look like. And being in therapy, helping to realize that, hey, I don't have to look a certain way or live my life a certain way or have a certain career path. You know, I can take longer to do things and that's okay. Like who I am today in this moment is okay. I was okay in 2017 as Valerie. I'm okay in 2024 as Valerie. God willing, 2025 still here. She's going to be great. You know what I mean? So I put a lot of pressure on myself. I've always been that type of person, kind of like a perfectionist kind of an attitude. I want to say it's probably from like my teaching days. Um, but yeah, always wanting to like hit the mark, always wanting to nail it, always wanting to achieve that goal in the time frame that I have for myself. And when things don't work out, it's kind of like, oh man, it's never gonna happen. Or like, well, there goes that dream. Or Valerie, why couldn't you just, you know, XYZ? But being in therapy really helped me to like not be so hard on myself and to just be more patient with myself, more forgiving, giving myself grace, giving grace to other people as well. Yeah, I think in general, it's helped me to stop like beating myself up with the shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
Those are killers, right? The- and it's such a beautiful thing to hear that you now have space to be more you all of the time, right? And not being okay. Um, I remember in my first therapeutic relationship, and I smile because I did not like my first
I love
therapist.
that phrasing. My first therapeutic relationship.
Yeah, yeah. It felt like a little bit of like Goldilocks, right? The first one I didn't like, the second one a little bit better, and then the third one was just right, you know. But I learned things from all of them. It's just that the approaches in which they shared the insights with me, um, some work better than others, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in my first therapeutic relationship, I was really struggling with the idea of whether or not I was a good person, right? And just have, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. and having this thought that like I had to be my idea of good all the time. And because I didn't always think in a way that other people did, or there were times when I wanted to do something more for me than for other people, that I was being a bad person. And my therapist at the time said, you do know that people are complex, right? Like you can be a good person who also has like some bad qualities or may do bad things or like engage in bad behaviors. And I was like, what? What, what do you mean? You mean people aren't all good and they're not all bad? And she was like, no. And I was like, and this is, when was this? Maybe around 2017, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my doctoral program studying to be a psychologist and carrying around this idea that all people are all good or all bad. And I was like, oh no, because every year for my New Year's resolution, I would write down, I want to be a nice person.
Mm.
And I didn't understand that niceness was allowing people to do whatever they wanted, not saying
Whew.
no, being a people pleaser and a pushover, right? And
Mhm.
not recognizing that I have capacity for kindness, which is different than niceness. So now I don't
Mhm.
want it. And when people tell me, oh, you're not a nice person, I can hear the manipulative element to it, you know, because it's often when I have said, I don't want to do this thing, or I
Right.
kind of call them out on something that they've done to violate some kind of boundary for me, right? Um,
Yeah.
and if I hadn't gone to therapy, maybe I would have continued to have this idea that there's something wrong with me because of the way that I show up and the way that I think about things. Now, it's not to say that I don't need to like change or improve on the way that I interact with people or whatever. Um, why are you smiling?
No, I'm thinking because I'm kind of having like a aha moment. I've been watching a
Mm,
lot of old Oprah episodes. Don't judge me, but but I'm having an aha moment about like how I've had a lot of those same feelings, and then I'm
mm,
thinking like, is that like a woman thing or is it like a Black woman thing to where we always have to like appease other people or like sacrifice time, energy, and do all this like invisible labor or emotional labor or all these other things for other people and like putting ourselves on the back burner. And it's just kind of like, is that a us thing? I mean, like a Black woman thing, or is that just like a woman thing? Or what is that? So that's what I was like, don't interrupt. But I was thinking that as you were speaking.
and I want us to talk about that. I also want to give context, just in case the viewers felt a little bite to the why are you smiling, right? Valerie and I are friends, as actual friends, and we hang out together in social settings. And um, I'm always the person to arrive the last, maybe, or the latest
Mm.
group, and also leaving first, right? I like my social interactions short, right? And sometimes people are just like, that's not nice, and I hear commentary about it, not from you, Val. But that's why I was like, it kind of touched on a little, sensitivity, perhaps tenderness
Aw.
around how I show up in social settings. But I have social anxiety, so y'all gonna have to deal with the hour and a half that I grace y'all with.
And we appreciate and value that hour and a half that you fit us in, okay? We value that. At least you came. At least you showed up. You left the
Thank you.
house, you made the effort. We appreciate you.
and
All right.
and the lateness showed how much effort it took to leave the house. But I thank you for acknowledging the hard work and
Of
effort
course.
there. Um, but back to the question: is it a Black woman thing, or maybe a woman thing around like niceness and how we show up, right? And is that was your question, right? Because let's
Yeah,
finish.
that's what I was thinking.
Mhm.
Is that something that's kind of been ingrained in us? Like, or are we socialized in a lot of ways to kind of put the needs of everyone else above our own? and also appeasing to other people, or just, hey, this guy really wants me to do this, so let me do that just because he asked me, or, I
Yeah.
won't be perceived as nice if I don't do this thing that I'm actually really uncomfortable with. I should be more giving. I should be
Agreeable.
agreeable.
That's
Don't
what I
be
was told. I need
selfish.
to be
Be
more
selfless.
agreeable. Hmm.
Yeah. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like, I don't know about all that.
No.
I think even just
I
as
don't
I
know.
get older too, I'm more like, no, with an attitude or without. It just depends on the day. But yeah,
I'm
you
not
might get a
being
little sass, a little spice. But yeah,
and
I'm getting better at it. But it's challenging.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think you're onto something about being socialized to be more agreeable, say yes more, be the nice person that people want to be around as women. And I would take it a step further in terms of like Black women and how the angry Black woman trope is just so damaging, right? Um, you're not allowed to feel angry about things that are angry making, right? Um, and then if you respond in a way that anybody would respond to something that's been done, it's just like, oh, the angry Black woman. And I think sometimes um, because of that label and that idea that's being like forced upon us, that we sometimes contort ourselves to not show up in that way. And that means being maybe more agreeable or having to smile. And just like there's something about, and there's studies where um, white people or other people in general perceive, I'm going to say white people because I do remember that particular study, perceive Black people as being more aggressive, right? Just in their facial expressions, right? So
Yep.
I think maybe, and I don't want to generalize, but maybe a part of us trying to be nicer or more agreeable and likable is to offset the automatic you're an aggressive person who's about to attack me, or you don't like me just because I'm
Yes.
trying to eat my lunch by myself and have a quiet moment to connect with TikTok or whatever something.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I definitely experienced a lot of that, especially in the workplace, because I mean, in my line of work, like I mentioned, I work in tech now, and there aren't a whole lot of Black women in this space, like in general. But in my particular company, like I might be like maybe one of a handful of Black women. But in previous roles, there just aren't a lot of Black women. But I have felt the pressure of, hey, let me be super nice, let me be agreeable, let me not call people out on something that I feel like is unfair, or even like borderline sexual harassment. You know what I mean? It was just so important to me to just smile and just remember, like, hey, you need this job. You don't want them trying to get rid of you just because you spoke up, or you had an opinion that went against the grain, or, yeah. What's funny, can I tell a quick story?
Of course,
Um,
a quick
so
story.
at probably one of my first like tech jobs, it was more like a freelance role. Um, I won't name the company, but like I said, not a lot of Black people in this entire company. It's a very well-known company, I'll have you know. But yeah, there was like a Halloween party one October, and they were having like a costume party, which was fine. I don't care. It's a costume party. We did a lot of happy hours in the office, sponsored lunches, all that stuff. A lot of people came dressed up. Fine. I don't care. I didn't dress up, right? And so they were having like the costume contest towards the end of the workday. And I remember just looking at everybody, some of the costumes were great, some not so great. I dipped out early because I just like, okay, it's like 6 o'clock. I'm ready to go home. I went home, didn't think anything about it. A couple of days later, another Black woman who her and I weren't even like cool, but Black recognize Black, you know? So
Mhm.
she pulled me to the side. She's like, hey, Valerie, do you have a second? I'm like, yeah, girl. What's up? We're in the bathroom. What's up? She's like, let's go to a conference room. So we went to a conference room. And she's like, Valerie, somebody went to HR and said that you had an issue with such and such as Halloween costume. And you said it was like a racist um costume, and you that's why you left early, was because it was a racist costume and you were offended by it and all this stuff. I said, what?
Mm.
Excuse me?
Mhm. Mhm.
What is going on? She's like, yeah, they're talking about it. Mind you, these are people that I didn't work with on like a day-to-day basis. I didn't even know they knew I existed, but yet like they were allegedly, you know, talking about how I was offended by someone else's Halloween costume. I couldn't even recall the costume. I don't remember, but I think maybe because my attitude at the little costume contest was very like, ready to go home, you know, just not impressed. Maybe I just wasn't impressed. And I guess that
Mhm.
gave off like, oh, she's offended by whatever the costume. I literally don't remember what the costume was that would have been offensive. So I don't know. From that moment on, you know, nobody approached me outside of her about that whole situation. But you know, I trusted her enough to know that, you know, she's not the type of person to this day to like make things up. She was really trying to look out for me and tell me what people were saying behind my back. And I appreciated that. But from that point on, I kind of just had this feeling of, wow, I really do need to make more of an effort to smile and to be a little more friendly and to just show up and present and always be on when I'm in the office,
Mhm.
even when I'm not in a meeting, even when I'm just at my desk, minding my business, even when I'm going to the lunchroom to get a cup of tea or something like that. So that just came to my mind as soon as you started talking about like being perceived and how we do feel the pressure of always having to smile and, oh my God, look happy to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Form. It's exhausting.
Mhm.
It really is.
Mhm. I thank you for sharing that story, right? And I'm sure it probably resonates with a lot of people, and it certainly resonates with me, right? I think a lot of Black women have stories like that where someone puts a narrative on you based on what they were feeling, right? Because you didn't have a conversation, you didn't make any comments about anything. But you know, what do they say? Hit dogs holler, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if you were feeling a type of way about your costume, perhaps the one Black woman who left earlier just like it's it's because of this, right? Um,
Right.
which you know, you went to HR to talk about a potentially racist costume, and the focus is on the fact that you left early, and you said that well, was the costume racist? Like, is that not the question that should be asked here? But I
Right.
digress.
This is bringing up. I hadn't thought about that in like years, but ugh, man, I'm so grateful to be working remotely. Ugh,
Um,
hallelujah. Sorry.
yeah, no, that has some of its challenges, but you know, when it
Yeah.
comes to inter-office dynamics, that can certainly, you know, be helpful. Uh, your story helps me, I think, illustrate the point of like why I think therapy is important, because sometimes there are not a lot of spaces for you to be your authentic self, right? And when you're in therapy and it's a good therapeutic relationship, right? You and your therapist are here to hear eye to eye and kind of understanding each other. Uh, you don't have to perform, right? You can, that's one of the things that
Yes.
you can just kind of like shrug off whatever cape that you're wearing, or, you know, take off the mask or lower the mask that you have to wear in these other spaces. And there's something so relieving about that, um, where it's just like especially I think my last two therapists were Black women, and there were things that I just didn't have to explain, and they were just like, yeah, you know, yeah, and that felt like a coming home, like, ah, God, you're taking off your bra, right? Right, you're just like maybe pulling off your wig, having a Viola moment, just like, let me tell you what happened this week. And for my clients, one of the things that I see, and it feels a little heartbreaking, is that it is hard to get to that space of being able to cry,
Mhm.
able to say like you were hurt or upset about something without having to like keep it in a very contained way, right?
Yeah.
Um, and my job is to like help you ugly cry and just let that go. And then also understand that when our session is over, that we got to put that back on, unfortunately, right? Because this
Mhm.
is not, a lot of spaces aren't safe enough to do that in the world. And that's unfortunate, but that's also the reality of the world that we live in.
Definitely. And I've been fortunate enough to have, like, I think about two of my therapists have been Black women. Was it two? Yeah, I think it's two. But one in particular, I was with her for about like 2 years. And I prefer like an older Black woman. I don't know. I love like older women and connecting with them and like soaking up their wisdom. And yeah, it was really comfortable being able to, like you said, peel back the wig and truth is I'm tired. Like she gets it. You can make
Uh-huh.
cultural references, jokes, all kinds of stuff. It feels, in a sense, like you said, like kind of coming home. And even in that situation, my story that I mentioned, I remember my Black woman therapist just kind of being like, yeah, that's not that surprising to me. And she also had the space to, I wouldn't say she didn't like share her experiences, but she kind of gave me like general experiences that helped me to see that kind of thing happens in the workplace and it can be challenging. And here's how you can cope with that moving forward. And here's how you can, not take that so personally. And I think that's super valuable because I think non-Black people could understand our experience, but I think it's just different when you've lived through that kind of a thing, or I don't know. I'm not the therapist here, but I don't know. I think it makes, when you can relate to somebody, I think it's more personal. It's maybe a little more special. Don't get me wrong. I've had white therapists. I have one lady who's really nice. Actually, two. I've had a lot of therapists. Okay, just say I have, but no, they've been great. They've been great, and they've helped me in a lot of different ways. But the connection was deepest with my Black women therapists for sure. So I think
Was
there's a
that the
lot of value.
ancestors' voice or something? Like, what was that?
What was that?
I said, was that the ancestors' voice? Like, no, I agree. And research does show that, I don't know if it's updated research, so maybe I shouldn't share this, but research has shown in the past that if a therapist of color is working with a white client, that they're likely to stay in that therapeutic relationship for a while. But if it's reversed, where it's a client of color and a white therapist, that the therapeutic time together is shorter, and there's a lot more
Mm.
likelihood that the person might drop out of therapy. And it's not to say that they're not skilled therapists, but that's just, I don't know if there's been new research. That's the last research I heard. Um, so don't cancel me because of that. Okay.
The data
All
is
right.
there, the data is there. But yeah, I could definitely see that. There's just some things that you can relate to with someone that you can't relate to with others.
Yeah. And that is okay. That is a part of the human experience.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, let me get settled. Let me get a little relaxed as we get into more of the meat and potatoes of things, right? Um,
Yes.
so we talked a little bit about representation and like how that matters, and just the impact that it has on your experience in therapy. And to go back to an earlier point, we were talking about how hard it is to kind of show up as a Black woman in the world sometimes, and how there are like these narratives that are put on us, expectations to show up in a particular way. And then even when we try, it's still like not good enough. And it doesn't meet the other person's perceptions of what we, or expectations of what we should look like and how we should show up, how we should speak, how we should walk, how we should talk, all of the things. So, how do you maintain good mental health given all of these expectations that are thrust upon you as a Black woman?
Balance. I try to have balance in all aspects of my life. I like to do things that spark joy, bring me happiness. A lot of times that's hanging out with friends, laughing, you know what I mean? Journaling is also something that's really, really helped me. I think I got my first journal when I was probably like 12. One of
Mm,
my she's not officially my aunt. She's like an older cousin, but I just call her aunt, out of
yeah.
respect. But she gave me
Yeah.
a journal and I was probably like 12. And I remember just writing in it. And it's funny, I went back whenever I go back to my parents' house, I found the journal and I was reading it and I was like, 12-year-old Valerie was not psycho, but just 12-year-old stuff was just so
Mhm.
hilarious. But yeah, I love to journal. I'm thinking about one day turning it into a book. I don't know. My life's pretty interesting.
Oh,
I have to,
okay.
cross out some names and change names to Jane
Mhm.
Doe, John Doe. But no, journaling has been a great help. I love to also go back and reflect on like a year ago or 5 years ago and be like, wow, I was really pressed about that. And now I don't care.
Yeah.
Wow, that passed. I moved on. I hit that goal. So yeah, journaling's pretty important. I love to dance. I love Beyonce. I know we both are Beyonce fans. So listening to some of her music, trying to sing off key. There's a part in like Virgo's Groove that I feel like I can almost like I'm not gonna do it here. I'm not gonna show that to y'all now, but I love to like practice that run. It's like a little self-care. So singing and dancing, not really caring about what people think about me. That's something I'm getting really good at, is just caring less about what people think about me or my life. It's also been super helpful. And then just treating myself when I can, like buying the expensive food or having that
Mhm.
extra chocolate chip cookie, getting that gelato. Why not? Um,
Going for that run in the park.
right. So all of those things are great. And then also, dipping in and out of therapy as needed. Um,
Right.
right now, I don't feel like I'm going through something to where it's like, oh my gosh, I need to meet with a therapist every single week or twice a week. I'm not in that space. So at this
Mhm.
point, it might be like a little maintenance check in here and there. But yeah, those are some of the ways that I try to stay on top of my mental health. And I also like to be open with friends and family too about what I'm going through and letting them know, hey, none of us really have it all together. It's okay to open up and share. Um, yeah, I think yeah. And it's also fun. I do also want to add that, at least in my life, pretty much everybody I know has been in therapy, is a therapist, or they're open to the idea of therapy. Like, and that's just in my life. I don't know a lot of people who are like, oh gosh. I think it's just become so normalized in recent years, especially because of social media and a lot of these influencers, public figures, coming out and embracing therapy and opening up about their journeys, it's really prompted other people to explore their own options. And I want to see
Mhm.
more men get involved in therapy too, not just the women. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you brought up several good points. I know, I smiled when you said journaling because I know I've recommended it to literally all of my clients, and some of them are just like, I don't know. There's something about putting your thoughts and your experiences to paper that makes it a little bit more real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long lasting, and sometimes it's hard to kind of get in touch with that and be okay to accept that this is part of the reality, even if it's, you know, um, in your head, right? It's still something that's happening. So, um, the other part is that therapy doesn't have to be a lifelong commitment. Right? I think people, and I say this to my clients, and first thing, well, I think I've forgotten to say it, and it's bitten me in the butt. But I usually say, I don't want to retire with you, right? I want to see you. I want us to do what we got to do. We'll go as far as we can go together, and maybe you'll go with someone else on another chapter of your life. But I'm not working until I'm 80 years old with you. Okay, this doesn't have to be. We're things, but you don't have to commit to 40 years of therapy with the same person, or 40 years of therapy in general, right? There are
Right.
sometimes very discrete things that are happening in your life that you need support with. And then
Mhm.
once that feels resolved, you go back in the world and you do your thing. And then, you come back when you fit. And
Right.
that's okay, right? But I think that that's a common misconception that um, if you need therapy now, then you're going to need it forever. And
Yeah.
that's not true. That's not
Yeah,
true.
I think more people need to understand that, you don't have to be to your point, you don't have to be in therapy for the rest of your life or not even a year. It might just be a couple of months or, like I said, a little maintenance session once a month. I don't know if that's like a best practice, but you can make it what you want.
Yeah, I say you come for a little booster, you come in, how are things? What's going on? Oh, great, you're great. Love that for you. I'll see you in a month, right? And
Yeah.
then we also reevaluate, do I need to see you in a month? Are you coming? I mean, look, I like money just as much as the other person, right? Maybe more. But not to the point where I'm going to be telling you that you need to come every week to talk to me, and then we stare at each other and I'm just like, and you're like, we have nothing to talk about. It doesn't make sense, right? We're here to do the work, and if you don't have any work to do right now and you're fine overall, that's okay. And let
Yeah.
me clarify. Being fine overall doesn't mean that you don't get angry, that you don't have trouble in your relationship sometimes. It's just that it's not so overwhelming that you need the additional support of therapy, right? Um, but
Yeah.
some people just like having therapy to just shoot the breeze, just have
Yeah,
somebody.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know in one of my longest therapy stints, it was probably like 2 years, but I'd say like the last 2 or 3 months, it got to the point where I was kind of like, I think
Yay.
I worked through that. It was kind of like trying to just, what else is there? And then it got to the point where I was like, we both agreed. I was like, I'm okay. But it was scary to say, like, I think I'm okay now, and then of course, we had like kind of like our closer session where she expressed how like I still have it's like I recorded it, so it's like a little voice note I listen to sometimes just to
Hmm.
be like, oh, she was so proud of me and she said these great things about my growth, because I think the therapist can, well, first of all, they're more than likely like tracking your growth whether we recognize it or not, And then they're able to recall, like, hey, when you first started with me, this is where you were. Now look at you. That's growth, you know? So
Yeah.
just kind of having that like graduation last session with her, it was really refreshing. And we did say like, oh, you know, I'll be back in 3 months. I didn't go back. Like I didn't need her, you know, like I was like, I think I'm good on that. So yeah, it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a life sentence. Yeah, to your point.
Mhm. Why didn't say sentence? And then,
Right. Not like jail, but you know.
yeah. Um, what what advice would you give to someone who might be like a little bit hesitant to start therapy, or just like maybe in that contemplation stage of change of like maybe I need it, maybe not, or like what would people think of me? What would you say to them?
I would say just start, you know. Do a little research. Do some Googling, you know. I have so many answers. But I think just getting started is probably gonna be the easiest and most logical first step. If you have like insurance that you, or if you can get therapy through your work's insurance or something like that, that'd be helpful to figure out how much is it going to cost. Do I have free coverage? You know, how many sessions can I get for free? And really look into it, and then give yourself a few sessions with the therapist that you decide on. See if it's working for you. If y'all are gelling, great. If you're not gelling, try another therapist. And then I think also just you have to know that your issues and your values and your emotions, they're all valid. And even if you might see them as just trivial or like, oh, everybody goes through this, you don't have to really compare yourself to anyone. So your reasons for going into therapy are your own. So you
Right.
don't have to feel like, oh, I have to tell everybody or post on IG, whoop, I'm in therapy today. Or, you know, you can keep it as private as you want to. You don't have to tell anybody really
Mhm.
if you're going, and just keep what you learn to yourself. Um, but yeah, get started and you'll be surprised at what you learn about yourself and your situation. Um, yeah. And I would just also just, you know, put the feeler out there that if you are like a very religious person, know that you can have your religion and you can have therapy, you know, they can work together. And you shouldn't really let that get in the way of helping yourself or healing yourself. Um, but yeah, those are some of the things I would encourage other people to do. And then also just talking to your closest friends about what are their thoughts about therapy. Because you never know. Maybe they've gone through therapy, whether it was for like a 2 month stint or even like couples counseling or something like that.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. Even if some people like talk to their religious leaders about issues that they're having, which essentially is like a form of therapy.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would tell them to do all those things. And then also, you know, listen to therapy podcasts like Conversations on the Couch or, you know, all those other podcasts about therapy. We don't have to mention them. But yeah, you know, do some do some research, you know, listen. YouTube, the internet is there, people. We have internet access 24/7. So look into it. It's to help yourself. It's like going to the doctor. You know how you're supposed to go to the doctor once a year to get your blood pressure checked, your woman's exam and stuff like that yearly. You should take that same type of care for your mental health. You know, you can't see by
Yeah.
looking at somebody, you know, whether or not they're like mentally unwell, unstable. So you gotta get those conversations flowing. So start.
Yeah. Look at you, Val, just dropping all the gems. I'm just like, which one do I want to hop on first and just like talk about? Because there are a couple of things there that I think are so important. And we'll do the most recent one is that your people, I guess, prioritize their physical health a lot more than their mental health, right? And there's also this recognition that they don't also prioritize their physical health, right? Because a lot of people don't actually go to the doctor to get their yearly physical, to get their eye exam. Some people don't have
Ouch.
a primary care physician, right, that they go
Yeah.
to. And I think also, I just want to acknowledge that the access piece, right? The
Yeah.
insurance. Some people don't
Yeah.
have insurance, right? And
Yeah.
um, I'm not even going to talk about, the Affordable Healthcare Act, that they've, renamed the
Child.
Obamacare Act, even when they chopped and screwed it so much that it's just like, well, what do we do? That's a
Y'all just
whole other thing,
screwed.
a whole other episode, and maybe a whole other podcast. But yeah, when you do have access and you do have privilege, right? It's how do you use that privilege? And if you
Mhm.
do have insurance and you can get physical physicals or treat your physical health well, then you
Mhm.
also need to consider the fact that your mind is a part of the body and they are interconnected. And when one is not doing well, the other will not do well, So
Yes.
holding space for both of them, and showing priorities in both of them, I think is really important because mental health is still a part of health, you know. Um,
Period.
yeah. So I understand like access and how difficult that can be. But I think to your point, it's just like if you do have access, absolutely, make sure that you're taking all care of all parts of you and not just focusing on one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's also, well, I remember a point in time where I didn't have insurance just because, when I first moved to New York, whew, hard times, hard times. But I didn't have insurance, but I've always just been like a very resourceful person, and I like to think that a lot of Black women are super resourceful. But I like to take advantage of free resources out there. So, and I mean, maybe you know this a lot more than I do, but I think there are like certain, I don't want to say like group counseling kind of groups, or even like something online,
Yeah.
telehealth, like free telehealth sessions that are out there and
Mhm.
available. And like I mentioned earlier, listening to podcasts about therapy or a specific issue you might be having. I think those are helpful. But
Mhm.
I also just, I feel like to a certain extent, you can let things come to you if you kind of push, if you just start and like put it out there and start being a little more inquisitive about getting help. You might be
Mhm.
surprised at what resources might come your way, or the person who might be like, hey, by the way, I know somebody who's doing 12 free sessions, are you interested? And you know, so I'm just
Yeah.
saying, I know access is a huge thing, especially in the Black community when it comes to getting mental health support. But I think you should still try. Not to say
There.
that you're saying don't do that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. 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 We're not calling anybody lazy and that they have to get up
Exactly.
to work.
Exactly. Not saying that.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think just to mention here that the Loveland Foundation is one of those places that offers um, vouchers to people, to have therapy, right? Um, and it's not. I don't know. Excuse me. I know that you have to apply for it, but I don't know how many sessions that you get. I've had people that had like 4 sessions, or vouchers for 4 sessions, which you might say, what are 4 sessions going to do for me? But it's better than nothing, right? And I think
Exactly.
for folks that have means, right? Perhaps you want to consider donating to the Loveland Foundation or other
Yes.
foundations like that. The Love and Kindness Wellness Services Foundation, Wellness Foundation, not the services part. They have Love and Kindness Wellness Foundation. They also are working on creating access and providing resources for folks that don't have um, access to therapy. And there's so many more options available out there. I think that if you go to your local public library, they can also help you research some of those resources too. Yeah. They're out
Yeah.
there. It just takes a little bit of patience and
Mm-hmm.
creativity um, and resilience to get into it because it can be challenging. You know, when you've got all
Yeah.
these things going on to then have to do this research, yeah, it can be challenging, but certainly doable. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Val. It's been good to talk to you, but our time is about to wrap up.
Oh
So
man.
I know the hour went by really, really quickly. Um, but I want to be respectful of time. I know you're a busy woman, you got things to do, right? And the people's got
And
things to do
do
too.
and do. Mm-hmm. Just kidding.
So, what's one message that you hope the listeners and viewers will walk away from in regards to mental health and perhaps taking good care of themselves?
I think it's okay to be not okay. I think that's something that we need to recognize, specifically, for Black women. I think it's okay to ask for help, especially in terms of seeking mental health help. I think that's important. And if you're curious about therapy, I would encourage people to just start. Like I said, even if that means just Googling or talking to a friend or loved one about therapy, just start researching it. And then once you kind of figure out, hey, I want to give this therapy thing a try, commit to it for a certain amount of time, see what you can get out of it, squeeze as much out of it as you can. And then, just be open about it. Be open with your therapist, be honest so that you can really get the most out of your sessions. And don't be
Yeah,
scared, don't be scared, don't be ashamed. There's nothing wrong with getting help. The most successful people in the world have therapists. I saw something the other day about Tina Knowles, Beyonce and Solange's mom. But she said that she had her daughters in therapy as like when they were really young, just
mhm.
so that they could understand that Beyonce is she was a superstar. At that time she was just like really popular in Houston, but Tina just felt like it was really important to have her daughters in therapy so they have more of a grounded sense. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool. So hey, if Beyonce was in therapy at one time,
Anybody can do it.
anybody can do it. Anybody can go.
You know what? I'm gonna drop our Beyonce dance video as a link
Whoa,
to
whoa, whoa, whoa. No.
for further inspiration. Okay.
Excuse
All right.
me. I didn't consent to that. So
All right. We have to respect, consent. So
thank
I will
you.
keep that as a treasured moment between the two of us
Thank you. Thank you.
and our friends and family. Yeah. So
Excuse me.
no, I think that those are really great points. Um, you have to think about like what is the worst that can happen if you do go to a
Yes.
therapy session, right? Is what is the tolerable pain, right? Maybe or tolerable discomfort, right? The discomfort that you're having with whatever is going on in your life,
Mhm.
or the discomfort that might come up about while you're talking about it and trying to work through it and move through it, right? So
Mhm.
it's a choice. Um, and again, you don't have to stay there forever. You don't have to stay more than one session if you don't like the person, right? But each time it's I'm choosing me
Mhm.
moment. And I'm choosing to do something different, even if it feels really hard or almost impossible to get through, right? And I think, if you were giving yourself compassion and your therapist is giving you compassion too, that you can try to be as gentle as you move through the stuff, and it doesn't have to feel all the time like, you're just having the worst experience in your life.
Yeah,
It's usually easier than you think.
definitely.
Right?
It's like having a conversation, except it's just all about you, you know? You don't have to know anything about your therapist. I really don't know anything about my therapist's lives outside of like their name.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really selfish conversation, but much needed.
Yeah. And, maybe we need to get a little bit more comfortable being in conversations about ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ugh. Fantastic, Dr. Danielle.
Well,
Fantastic.
thank you, Valerie. I'm so glad you agreed to do this. I don't know how I brought it up in the first place. I think you might have mentioned jokingly, "Oh yeah, I'll be a guest in the podcast," and I was like, "Yes, yes, I will take that. Absolutely, let's go." You being here and being open and honest about the conversation, and yeah, just taking your time to be here with me and with us.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Oh, okay. I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoyed the experience. All right, y'all. This was another episode of Conversations on the Couch with Valerie Kirby, email marketing extraordinaire. I will put her info in the link so that, in case you missed it in the episode, you have it. You have it available to you. I just want to offer a gentle reminder that Conversations on the Couch and all the episodes and content here does not consist of being a substitute for a wonderful, healthy, professional relationship with a licensed mental health clinician. So take what is helpful, leave what is not. But I do hope that you have learned something good and you've enjoyed your time with us today. And we'll see you next time on the couch.
Bye.
Well, everybody, take good care.